one on the left there, Fergus, is doing some quite astonishing sort of foot movements or leg standing balancing acts. That one there, yeah. Then you're wondering how tall the storks are. They are probably about, if they stand fully erect, probably about 4 feet. So they're pretty tall, maybe, 3'10" to 4 feet. So they're not the tallest birds in the world, but they certainly are pretty tall. They're not as tall, for example, as a saddlebill. There we go, taking off into the air. Into the wind is what I meant there. Let's see if the other one does the same. You see how it had to turn into the wind, just like an aeroplane taking off, and sort of run along. Come on, bird, take off. I find it fascinating watching them trying to take off. They just need a little bit of lift into the air before it becomes possible. But it's not easy for them because they're so heavy, and they're designed for soaring, and not designed for sort of rapid takeoff and landing. Come on, bird, off you go, show us again. Open your wings. I could just start clapping wildly if I wanted it really to take off, but I'm not going to do that. That'd be nasty, wouldn't it, Fergus? Charles, you say, why do the storks have such large beaks? Well, there are probably a few reasons. Their beaks are quite nicely designed for scavengers. I mean, they're not only meat scavengers, they'll eat fish. So their beaks can be used to hunt fish in the same way that most storks do, and they scavenge a lot, or certainly take a lot of almost semi-dead fish, if you know what I mean. So fish that are in drying pans that are flapping about in the mud, they will take, and so their beaks are designed for that too. They're heavy enough for them to be able to break open carcasses and get into carcasses, but the disadvantage of the sort of multi-use of the stork's beak is that it doesn't have that hooked tooth that will allow them to sort of tear flesh. And so it's kind of multi-use scavenging fishing beak, but it's not very specialized for scavenging. And so while it allows the bird to take a greater variety of food, it certainly reduces its ability to open up carcasses. Alrighty, I think let's move on from here. Oh, there we go, it's going to take off. Come on, come on. As the wind blows, go for it. Just waddling. You're just waddling. Don't waddle. Waddling is unbecoming. Even for a vulture. No. Alright, let's move on. I'm going to go and see where that line of wildebeest was going. They were walking along there, sort of towards one of the crossing points, so we'll head along there and see if we don't spot something. Sorry, I know this will sound funny. I'm just trying to fix my microphone, which I'm sure is now visible as it hangs from my hat. Look down this little ditch where the lions are often. Right, now I have good news for you. Apparently one of Scott's cheetah has managed to rouse itself.
Well, maybe this individual will be able to wake up the rest of the coalition and urge them on some more adventures. But for now, just some very friendly grooming. And I'm fascinated by the relationships between these 5 males. I certainly haven't got to know them well individually enough. maybe, or who may have better bonds or relationships with who within the coalition, but these two clearly. I would also love to know how they came about meeting, and what went on then, how long ago that was. There's just... Humans will very seldom be in the right place to be able to witness or document. So who knows, maybe nobody knows where these guys came from, how they met, what happened when they met. But for now, you can see they are certainly enjoying the benefits of having one another around. You'll also notice with these two that the one that started doing the grooming, its head is considerably smaller than the one on the right. So the one on the left, oh, cheetah kisses. So there's definitely a size difference, and you wonder if that doesn't have the basic and normal kind of hierarchical impact or effects. Size does matter most often in nature, and the bigger, stronger individuals will command respect, but in this case certainly giving back some loving. Wonderful. So you did certainly come at a good time. We were just chatting to a young boy from England who's an aspiring filmmaker. So we showed him around all of VM's fancy toys, and it was very nice to be able to share a little bit of what we get up to with people who are here. There's so many people that do not know about the Safari Life family just yet, so we're trying to spread the word as much as we can here with passing vehicles, and we trust you two are also helping to spread the word. The best times to spread the word, ideally, is when we've got action or something exciting happening. You should just phone a friend, tell them to tune in. We would really appreciate that, because the more of us that get involved and are proactive with this experience, the more places we can be on safari together. And for now, I'm very, very grateful that we are in both Djuma and the Mara, two wonderful wilderness areas that we are very fortunate to be able to be exploring together. But I would be lying if I said there's a whole bunch more places that we could be having a whole bunch of fun in. What is the time? Lost track of things. Okay, so still quite a lot of time left on the morning safari. I think what we may do is head off and show you a little bit of what else is going around this area, and then come back here and settle in for another 24-hour stint with them. Oh, Donna, you would like to know if female cheetahs would form a pride like a lion, and no, sadly, it is just the lion that has realized the benefits of teamwork amongst the ladies. It is not common or not likely for cheetah females to join forces. Having said that, though, there are two sisters that have recently left their mother about 2.5 months ago. They're only 16 months old, so still quite young, and they are spending a lot of time together. What have they seen? What have you seen? I can't see this. So I'm just going to perch myself up a little bit. A lone gnu. Would be a can't seem to see anything, but they're not looking too concerned. It was possibly just a little animal that moved off in the distance and is now in an area where I cannot see it. Although they are looking, all of them are kind of heads up now, so that's promising. Maybe they're planning another little stroll. It certainly is possible. What's fascinating, and what's tricky for us is that we obviously want to spend as much time as physically possible with them to ensure that we guarantee you guys some action. The thing is, I've heard of these guys making kills at all times of the day. Mid-morning, midday. It was midday that they made the biggest kill that I've heard of them making since being here. They killed a fully grown wildebeest at 12 o'clock midday. So anything can happen. Of course, the state of their bellies has an impact on the likelihood of them becoming active and making a kill, as does the opportunities that may be around them. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be too many opportunities, but that's not to say a stranded gnu doesn't come running past looking for mom, or any other easy meals, or that they just get the desire to take a stroll, and who knows what they may bump into on that stroll. Another thing that I would not love to share with you, but that we are going to share with you at some point, so I'm actually a little bit terrified for it, because I'm becoming quite attached to these. We have some close run-ins with lions, and possibly even leopards. It'll be interesting to see what happens with leopards, because there are 5 of them, so they may be able to command a little bit more respect than a single cheetah would. What is going to happen is that we're going to have some close encounters where we see these guys not using their high speed to catch prey, but using their high speed to make sure they don't become prey. But for now, peace and tranquility. Very good posture, mister. You're looking very upright. Well, our master tracker bushman down in the Sabi Sands, Tristan Ladix, is busy on the trail of something quite interesting. I would love to come and join you guys to see what it is, but sadly I can't, so off you go.
Well, we've just taken a walk through the bush here just to try and see if we can't find any more tracks, and it looks as though there's a male leopard walking around with Shadow and the cub, so all 3 are together walking into this block here. There's nothing coming out, so they've got to be somewhere inside here. One of the trackers is on foot. I've left him on the tracks and he's still going with them, but they're definitely walking towards Impala Plainside. Nothing comes out at Impala Plains, so they have to be somewhere between Impala Plains and where I left it, and I didn't leave it too far away at all, so hopefully the tracks will be able to get us these 3 all together. It would be nice to see. I'm pretty sure it's Tingana, given that it was vocalizing in the size of the track, so I would imagine it's Tingana is with Shadow and the cub, and they're all walking. There's no sign of them chasing one another or anything like that. They're all just walking normally with side by side by the looks of it. There's definitely nothing that crossed over this road, so what is quite amazing though is the amount of tracks for Shadow's cub inside this block here. There is just footprints for that little one running around all over the place. It's been having an absolute field day by the looks of it, so it's inside here and just been moving around, and that's why we haven't seen too much of it. I think the other day when we found Shadow, she had just come back from the cub. I think she was already there with it, and then she left it, and that's why we actually didn't hear her calling or anything like that. Now theoretically those tracks should come towards where I am now, so somewhere around here. I'm just trying to see if I can spot William, who's the tracker that's on foot, and see if I can't see him. He's with Aubrey, so I should be able to spot him in here somewhere, and if I can spot him, then I can get a better idea of where exactly these tracks are going, and just double check that we maybe didn't miss something. But when it comes to 3 leopard tracks, you shouldn't really be missing 3 of them crossing the road. You could miss 1, but not 3. Toby, who's 12 years old. Toby wondering what the lifespan is of a leopard. Well, Toby, in the males, it is about 12 to 15 years old, and Tony with an N. Sorry, Tony. With the male leopard, it's about 12 to 15. With the female leopard, they can go as much as 18 years old. So it's just a little bit shorter for the males because the males tend to fight with one another a lot and they try and push each other around. And so sometimes they get injured in fights and then they get pushed out and have to become nomadic or something like that. And it's much harder when they are that old to be able to fight with the younger males, whereas the females, they're not fighting as much, so they tend to be able to live a little bit longer. So their average lifespan is between sort of 15 and 18, whereas the males 12 to 15 years old. Now, I don't see any sign of William just yet. I'm going to try call him on the radio just now. It seems as though he must be somewhere in this vicinity. It's very close to where Impala Plains is, and there's definitely nothing coming out on either side, so they've got to be between me and William at the moment. Being elusive, these leopards, and wouldn't be surprised they're lying right next to the road, given how long the grass is. It's possible they could be lying right here and we've just missed them completely. But there's an eagle in the tree over there. We've had lots of birds of prey and meat eaters this morning, so I wonder which eagle we've got sitting there. I would hazard a guess at brown snake eagle, just given that we are in an area where the brown snake eagles tend to hang around, but it's all fluffy today, so difficult to say. Yes, it's a brown snake eagle. You can see already by the long legs that it's got with no feathers and that big round robust head that the brown snake eagle has. And like I say, this eagle must be dominant in this area because we see it quite a lot in this particular section. I've seen it many times here, and it spends its time on these big tall marula trees that have no leaves at the moment, and it looks with that big beady yellow eye for any signs of snakes or any movement in the grass of reptiles that it can then come down and grab. So even if there aren't snakes around, it will go after lizards as well. Maybe not something the size of a monitor lizard, but you'll find skinks will be in trouble and varying other small reptilian creatures. But snakes is its primary diet. And it would have been having a field day probably the last 2-3 days, because the last 2-3 days it's been hot, which means that the snakes have been moving around. We've seen a few snake tracks going over the road, and that's what this eagle wants. Is it wants active moving reptiles because it's easier to see them and to catch them than ones that are just sitting and not moving around too much at all. But doesn't seem to have found much. It seems to be having a bit of trouble balancing. It's having a bit of trouble balancing with all this wind. You see it kind of bouncing around all over the place at the moment. It can't be easy to be a big bird on a small branch like that when it's windy, because your weight will cause the whole branch to move a little bit and shake. So not going to be very easy at all. Anyway, nice to see though, nonetheless. Right, where am I going to go from here? Because like I said, there's no tracks crossing here. I would imagine that they must just be somewhere inside this block. Toby, who's 15 years old, or is it Kobe? Kobe, I would imagine, since Kobe is 15 and asks questions fairly regularly. Kobe, you're wondering if Tingana is tolerant of Shadow's cub. Kobe, I don't know. I mean, it is in all likelihood his, although she did mate with Anderson as well, but it's most likely it's Tingana's, so he must be fairly tolerant. I doubt that they've never spent time together. We at Safari Live have not seen, or as far as I know, have not seen Tingana with Shadow and the cub yet, but as far as I understand, they fairly tolerant. He must be tolerant because ultimately he must have come across her and the cubs at some point over the last 8 months. It's impossible that he hasn't. We know Tingana moves around quite a bit, so it really would be impossible to know, well, to think that he hasn't actually come across the cub, but I would imagine he must be tolerant. There must be some sort of tolerance for it, and with the tracks that we're seeing now, we can see that they're walking together, and so in all likelihood it's all fine. If it wasn't fine, he would be trying to attack Shadow's cub and trying to get rid of it, but at the moment he's just fine. He's just kind of letting it walk alongside of him from what the tracks say. Now I'm going to try and just get hold of this tracker, see where he is and see how those tracks are going, and while I do that, let's go back to James driving around along the Mara River.
Signal control come in. Said any bad words there. We've got a crocodile there. I think I may have now fixed it. Let's try again. Louise, try and talk to me now. Sorry about that. There we go. There we go. I fixed it now. All right, good. So we have a crocodile, and his name is, he doesn't have a name. Not as far as we know it, anyway. And it must be very difficult, I imagine, for crocodile mothers to give all their youngsters names. There can be hundreds of them born at a time. And what I'm going to do is we're now... Ooh, this is quite nice. We're approaching the South Main Crossing. And there are some zebra approaching down towards the river. Now, I haven't watched a crossing from the crossing before this year. Let's go and see, because I think we might get ourselves into quite prime position to be able to watch them go down into the river. Unfortunately, this fellow has parked. I'm not going to say how I think he's parked. It's not very well. Try not to go over the edge here. Let me just move back a little bit. I think they might just be having a drink, but we have watched the Paradise Pride do quite a lot of killing in this area. And so perhaps, if a crossing happens, lions will appear. Alright, let's just wait here. I can see the water as well, so what we'll do is look at all the wildebeest. They're not wildebeest, there's a zebra, aren't they? Let's watch them there. And as soon as a crossing begins to happen, if it does happen, what I'll do is just reverse and put us back into the first position we were at. There's no space, I'm afraid, with this chap parked like he is for more than one. There we go. Now, I've seen lots of zebra cross the river here in the mornings. It does happen quite a lot. I think they seem to prefer the early morning swim, the zebra, these days. We had one during our TV show on Saturday, which was quite fun. A single, I think, stallion just leapt in, did the backstroke, came across, and he was carried on. Something else of vital importance I wanted to say about this crossing, but I've forgotten. Ooh! There are a whole lot of wildebeest coming down towards the northern crossing there. Look at that. You see that big line there, Ferg? Ah, that is fascinating. I'm going to suggest that what we do is just make sure that the North Main Crossing camera is fixed on the North Main Crossing. Is it fixed there, Louise? Is it possible for someone to do that? Alrighty. That line of wildebeest is just disappearing. Yeah. I've parked Fergus at a horrible angle here. They're all just disappearing down in towards the river.
Hello everyone, we've just stopped to put the mattresses away and do one or two other bits and pieces, relieve oneself. We've left the cheetah and are now gonna see what else we can find you. I haven't fixed my lapel yet either, so you might not be able to hear me clearly, although both are still working. Good, we're going to change the batteries for that. William's opened a bag of crisps for breakfast. Breakfast of champions. Lightly salted, you said? Hardly salted. Oh no. We're going to have to look for some salt. Might have to stop one of the tourist vehicles with all their fancy bits and pieces. There's some people that gets heavily spoilt whilst on safari here, and we might need to stop in at one of those luxurious coffee breaks or picnic breakfasts and beg them for some snacks. Jumbo Habari. Jumbo is hello, Habari is actually the exact translation for Habari is news. So you could say Habari yako, news you, or Habari migration, what's the news on the migration? Iko Habari ya Djuma, is there any news about the cheetah? So that is Habari. And this is a Thompson's gazelle. It is a male. And is all alone, enjoying some breakfast nibbles, just like VM. I'm guessing this grass is also not very salty, just like VM's chips, so they are on a similar par regarding snacks. Very vast open plains here. As you can see, some zebra dotted in amongst them. A topi going for a bit of a morning jog there. That's him. The cheetah also do like moving through these plains. The tree that you can see on the left of your screen now is one that they often go and spend time at and scent mark at. But considering how few trees there are here, no wonder we're already beginning to work out which trees they like and which they don't. Oh no, it's just taken off a big lappet-faced vulture. Well done, VM. How I didn't see it initially, I am not too sure. It was sitting right next to us. We would have been able to show you the most epic view of it. But maybe we still will. It's landed. Let's see if we can get you a better look at it. It is the heavyweight of the vulture world. And it is absolutely huge. They command a lot of respect at the kills because they are far bigger than any of the other vultures. This will probably be twice the size of the hooded vulture, the smallest of the vultures. It's always a bit of a toss-up knowing when to stop the car. I tend to be quite greedy trying to get the money shot, but I think we will rely on VM's handiwork and the punch zoom to take you in close to this lappet-faced vulture. Morning. As you can see, not much with regards to fancy headwear. A bald head, which is actually very, very well suited for their lifestyle. It doesn't make sense to have any feathers when you are digging your head into carcasses, getting covered in blood and guts. It's far easier to keep clean if you are bald. And they've got that scarf that they can tuck their neck into. You can see that set of feathers around its neck, which not only keeps them nice and warm when they are cold here on the ground, but when they are soaring at very high altitudes, it gets extremely cold up there. So useful to have some good gear for high altitude freezing flying. I wonder when it's thinking of taking off and where it's going to head to today. Imagine how awesome. Oh, you're going to go now? I wish we could come with. Wouldn't that be incredible? So just be able to flutter off. And I mean, it could go, it's not going to need to, but it could if it wanted to go 100 miles, easily. Oh, it seems to be missing some feathers on its left wing. So maybe it's going to come straight back and land on the tree. Look at how cool this is. It's coming straight at us. Well done, VM. And he did as much as humanly possible, and then the roof got in the way. But that was great, wasn't it? Hello, Steffi. You'd like to know if there's any predators that attack vultures? I've heard of 2 vultures being attacked. One was a baby vulture up on the top of a very high tree. It could have been a jackalberry tree or an ebony tree. And it was a leopard, a young leopard that climbed right to the top of this tree. Vultures' nests are always right on the top of the canopy, not kind of midway or in the fork of the tree. And this leopard caught and ate a baby vulture out the nest. I mean, it was maybe the size of a chicken by that stage, but it hadn't fledged yet. So that's the one predator I've heard snacking on a vulture. I have also seen a jackal killing a vulture. Photographic sequence of 2 jackals having a squabble, and the jackal, a jackal and a vulture having a squabble, and the jackal ended up winning. Now, I have in the Mara, not since I've been here now, but on a previous trip when I was here last year, saw the most incredible sighting of these 2 black-backed jackals in and amongst maybe 20 or 30 vultures. And the vultures were biting the jackals were biting the vultures. I mean, they were all having a good go at one another. But other than that, I can't think what other animals. I mean, there's not going to be a huge amount that predates on them that I can think of or that I know of. If anybody knows otherwise, or any other random tales of how a vulture has met its doom, please let us know. What I will say though, and this is the bad news, is that sadly vultures are very, very highly persecuted or under major threats in most parts of Africa. Lots of traditional medicines use them. It believes, because they've got such good eyesight, that if you eat various parts of them that you can see into the future. That's not the case. And they get poisoned. They're easy to catch and poison because of their diet of anything dead. All you need to do is kill a small animal, poison it, and then you've got yourself a whole lot of fortune-telling medicine. They were also seen as negative kind of predators back in the day, when most predators were seen as negative beings in various ecosystems. So they have been quite highly persecuted. Luigi, I cannot hear you very clearly. It is as if you were whispering to me. Luigi is directing the show, aka Louise. I like to call her Luigi. I don't know why. Are you getting anything, wildebeest? Oh, there you are. Very good. No, I just... okay, well, you guys are in a very, very fortunate position, or unfortunate position, depending on your thoughts. You can let me know. But James and Tristan have both just jumped out of their vehicle and run off into the bush. So you're stuck with me. I don't know if it was a planned, a synchronized thing that James was going to run off into the Mara bush and Tristan was going to run off into the Djuma bush and just leave you with me. But that is the case. Seeing as though that is the case, let's pick up the speed, up the ante. We don't mean to chase you, little zebra foal, but you do know how to run very well. Off you go. One thing I love about being on safari is that everyone's friendly. It might be because we are driving around in the coolest cars in the Mara that people give us extra credit, who knows. But everyone is very friendly on safari, and it's wonderful to chat with the tourists, let them know what we're doing. As I'm sure most of you would have taken a while to fathom and get to grips with these live safaris when you may have first joined. When we tell a lot of people here what we're doing, they just shake their heads. It's actually quite funny. You often hear parents telling their kids, no, it'll only be a few years until you see the pictures from this documentary. Little do they know. Live, straight to you. And it's marvelous to have you with us. Even in times like that, when we nearly capsize the vehicle. Here's my toiletry bag. It'll be nice to have a shower at some point. Although, at least here it's a nice cool climate, so you don't get too grubby too quickly, as you would in a Djuma summer. You would not be able to do a mission like we are embarking on now. We would become health hazards. But here it's nice and cool, so we tend to keep not too dirty. Jeffrey, you've brought up another good point that I should have touched on regarding what may attack vultures, and you said don't lions attack them as well? And yes, they certainly try to, but I'm sure they would have, of course, managed to latch onto one unlucky vulture. I've just never seen footage of that, and that's why it didn't trigger my memory. But that's a very good point. Lions, as well as leopards, as well as cheetahs, will all chase off vultures as much as possible for obvious reasons. They don't want them to cash in on their hard-won meal. But how often a cheetah or a lion or leopard, in that fact, have managed to actually latch onto them, I'm not too sure. I guess my cheetah story was a little bit different in that, it was a young leopard learning how to hunt, catching a young vulture. So it was probably quite desperate for a meal, and a baby vulture was the best it could sum up. But actual adult vultures, I can't think of anything other than, like you say, Jeffrey, lion or other big predators who are trying to chase them off their kills, getting a hold of them. Dr. Rob, another predator, the caracal, will also attack vultures. I think we may need to streamline, or not streamline, but kind of narrow down the specifications of this topic, because it's a bit of a broad one. And like I said earlier, I think there's a difference between a baby vulnerable vulture being eaten out of its nest by genets, caracals, serval, something else, African wildcat, the smaller predators, a leopard, as opposed to an adult vulture being killed. I don't know if you guys agree with me. They're almost kind of two different avenues that I would love to explore and get to the bottom of with you, but there does need to be a bit of a distinction between the two, I think. Well, you'll be greatly relieved to hear Tristan has returned from his walkabout, and you're going to go and be able to find out exactly what he's been up to.
Well, we've still not managed to find anything further on the leopards. They seem to have grown wings and flown away and vanished by some, I don't know how. There's really no sign coming towards the road. The last tracks are not far from the road at all, but we can't find anything crossing. So they might be lying in some long grass somewhere there, and we'll just try and go after breakfast and track and see if we can't find something with maybe Herbie, and Aubrey is quite keen to go as well. So we'll try and see if we can't go and find them later. So we've decided to carry on and move up towards the hyena den and see if the little ones are up. But before we get there, we've managed to bump into some zebras, which is always a nice surprise. And they're up near quarantine, and there's a big herd of kudu with them, and some impalas, and lots of animals just kind of frolicking together, which is quite nice. It seems to be a small grouping of male zebras from what I can see. It looks like 4 stallions that are walking together, which is not uncommon to get bachelor herds. You do get them from time to time. There's one coming out of the road. It's going to be much easier for you. And there we go. So there do seem to be a bachelor herd of stallions, and like I say, it is common. You'll find that young males pushed out by adult males in from a harem will then form a grouping together just for safety in numbers. They like to hang around and have a few eyes and ears around just to be able to see what's going or coming and make sure that they stay nice and safe. Now I'm just going to try and catch up with them a little bit because I see the rest of them also coming down. The kudu have drifted off a little bit to our left and moved off, and the impala is all on the right hand side at this stage, so everybody seems to be going their separate ways currently. That's better. Now we can see you guys a little bit better. But they are magnificently beautiful animals. I think here we tend to appreciate them that much more just because they're not the most common sight for us. You know, we don't see huge amounts of zebra, and so when you do see them, it's always a welcome sight. Those striped behinds and bodies moving through the bush is always very pretty to watch, and the contrasting colors that they've got, and especially when they stand in big groups together, is always quite nice. They seem as though they're on quite a mission to get somewhere. I wonder if they're not heading towards Galago Pan for a drink. I would imagine that Galago Pan is probably the next stop for these guys. Let's see if they are going through. No, they've just stopped to feed over there. We'll come back to Galago Pan a little bit later once we've been to the hyena den and see if maybe they're not back feeding. Right here. There you go. And the young... Oh, whoopsie. She got a bit of a fright. And sometimes what happens with kudus is as soon as you stop, they get a bit nervous and then they start walking off. But there's a tasty leaf to get hold of before we get anywhere near that. So, always love animals, and you kind of run away in a panic and then stop and feed. It's almost as though squirrel syndrome kicks in and they can't help themselves when they see a tasty leaf to just nibble on it. You can see it's feeding off a bush willow at the moment. Now these bush willows typically in the summer months are not fed off too much by the animals. They'll prefer other plants, but now in winter, beggars can't be choosers, particularly the browsers. There's not that many leaves around, and so bush willows will form part of their diet. A large part of their diet, should I say, at this time of the year. Look at those ears, though. They do have the most magnificent ears. And off she goes as well. So they're also going to be disappearing behind us. So onward towards the hyena den is the plan, and we'll come back to our zebras and our kudus a little bit later. Hopefully they'll still be hanging around. Like I say, hopefully they're going to go towards Galago Pan for a drink. It'll be quite nice to have them all out and around the pan and lining up to get water. It's very pleasant to watch zebras drinking. I don't know why the contrast of all of them stacked up together is always very pretty, especially if there's a bit of a reflection and you get that stripy reflection on the water. It's always nice as well. But let's hope our little ones are out and about. They were yesterday and they were very cute, our 2 hyena cubs. They were playful and they were all over Gwen, so hopefully they will be here today, and Gwen will be there, and Ruben and Intima. It'd be nice to have them, the whole family. Yesterday I think it was just Gwen that was there, and Intima looked as though she was wandering and pottering about on her own. Didn't see any sign of Ruben, but the 2 little ones certainly were the highlight and the main attraction of that den site. They were playing and squeaking and trying not to fall down the hill, and there was lots of jumping and running around between Mom's legs. Gwen, of course, looked completely unfussed by this nonsense that was going on between her legs, but she seemed to just kind of take it easy, and the little ones went a little bit mad, which is what happens is often if Mom comes back to the den and calls them out, then it's almost like they've now been released from the confines of the den, and so it's all a bit chaotic. It's much like kids that have been confined in a car for a long period of time that get told to go run around in a beach or something like that. They tend to go a little bit on the mad side. Now, somebody who does not lack any energy and is much like our hyena cubs in that regard and is always up for something and doing some sort of mission to go and see things and do things and be active is Mr. Scott Dyson. Let's go across to him and see what he's doing for the rest of the day.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Tristan, but I can assure you I'm certainly not as active as the tail of a Thompson's gazelle. That would be quite something. Oh! And the reason we stopped at this herd is because we've noticed one little youngster. It was interestingly quite far away from the herd when we first saw it, and it's not uncommon for Thompson's gazelles to leave their youngsters away from the herd, tucked away in, well, in this case, what can be very short grass, using its camouflage to hide. And that way, Mom and Dad get some time to relax. Mom's milk reserves get to build up, and the youngster gets to stay away all on its own, but relatively safe, because any animals walking past essentially nothingness are not going to expect babies, whereas they'll be looking in and amongst the herds for the youngsters. So by stashing them away from the herd a little bit, it may seem like a bit of a silly or cruel move to drop your kid off in the middle of nowhere, but out here it certainly does seem to work. And I'm told a lot of you are enjoying the cuteness of this little gazelle. Well, just imagine what a tiny... That was incredible. That just put the cuteness overload into full overdrive. Cuteness into full overdrive, sorry. And what I was saying though is that when all of these things are tiny, minuscule newborns, which this one is not quite a tiny newborn. I think it's probably a month or so old, I'm guessing. I'm not a Thompson's gazelle expert, but I'd say it's a little bit on the older side. The fact that there's only one is also interesting. You wonder what happened to all of its cousins. Michael, you would like to know if this baby is too young to sex. From this distance, yes. But I think if we were a little bit closer, you would be able to, have a look between the legs, because that's one way of sexing them from a young age. Both young males and females will both have horns, though. That is what makes things tricky. So I appreciate your question, and that it may be a little bit harder than normal to sex. I've just spotted quite a pretty scene. Can you see the acacia at like 8 o'clock? Not on the horizon. Whole bunch of lady ostriches way off in the distance. And like Louise in the final control says, it does look like a little bush. I thought it was the canopy of a tree. That's what got my attention to it, but it didn't look quite right. And I think I've actually seen this flock before. I mean, it's quite a large flock. I remember counting 12 the other day with the cheetah pacing past them, and watching ostriches run is possibly one of my favorite things, even when they're just doing their regular kind of run like that. But they also do this where their wings, I can't do it because my wings are a bit stiff, but if I had wings and feathers, they run and their neck goes from side to side. It's a serious display. So two different running styles. One is almost a bit chaotic and spastic, but even the regular ting 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 kind of prancing looks very beautiful, especially when there's this many of them. We've got some exciting news from Mr. Henry, the migration controller himself. He is about to orchestrate a zebra crossing. Hopefully it will happen.
I'm sorry we lost signal, everybody. I think there's a dodgy antenna cable or something, which just, is inevitable driving around on these roads. And we did actually have a crossing, a wildebeest crossing, way in the distance, but it wasn't a particularly spectacular one. So just keep an eye on our Facebook feeds, and if another one happens, well, we'll be sure to bring it to you. In the meantime, these chaps have just been walking gently down to the water to have a bit of a drink, turning around and then coming back again to have a bit of a graze. They are sort of looking longingly to the other side of the river, and quite why they're doing that, I'm not sure. I imagine that there is just that sort of not human need, but indeed animal need to move to the other side, where it apparently seems things are much better. Alrighty, I think let's move along from here and see what else we can possibly find. So, well, I might just orientate you quickly. Orientate is the word, by the way. Orient is refers to the east, as opposed to place oneself in context. Right, let's go all the way across there. There's a rapid. You can see the rapids there. That is Main North Crossing, and our camera is right around where those rapids are. And just far sort of distant, there we go. You can actually see the camera there. There it is. And where we're sitting now is Main South. And we've seen a lot of crossing action over this particular piece of the river there. There you are. And that's where the animals pop out, both sides of the river. And I really think the animals are quite strongly affected as to their choice of crossing by how many vehicles there are and what sort of disturbance they've experienced the time before. But I think that we as human beings are affecting these crossings quite a lot. It's been amazing to me to watch whole herds of wildebeest change direction when we drive past them. And so I'm sure we are having an effect. Anyway, that was quite nice to see from here. It's my first crossing that I've watched from the river this year. All the others I've seen from the dam cams, and now seem to be in something of a morning traffic jam. The driver is now hiding underneath his dashboard. It's a very strange thing to be doing in the bush, I must confess. Anyway, there we are. Oh, by the way, many of you know that I was asking you why it is that people, when they see us, take pictures of us. And a few of you got a little upset with me and said I must suck it up and just accept that I'm a celebrity now, sort of thing. It's not me they're taking pictures of at all. I think it's the logo. I think it's our Nat Geo logo on the side of the car. So I've discovered that, but I've also now started taking pictures. Anybody who points a lens at me, I quickly take my camera up and point it at them, and then then they start to look quite bashful and afraid. It's very funny. I said to someone the other day, I said, should we take pictures of each other? And they said, yes, let's. Steffi, you say, why am I addicted to Africa? I think addicted is a strong term, Steffi. I am an African, so this is home. That's why. I don't think it's any greater than that, really. I mean, you know, there's some beautiful places in the world, and some people will like to tell you that, you know, there's that old Hemingway quote that is used extensively, and it goes, if you only visit... how does it go? If you only visit one place twice, make it Africa, or something like that. And yes, Africa certainly for me feels like home. It smells like home. It's where I was. What do I want to say? It's where it's the soil from which I grew. But there are very many beautiful parts of the world, and I've learnt that. I used to say, well, you know, who wants to go anywhere other than Africa? But there are hundreds of very gorgeous parts of planet Earth, and all of them deserve our care and attention. But it's just because it's in I guess it's just in my blood, because I was born here. And people
Well, we have come to the hyena den, and it is not active, but not very active. Everybody seems to be having a nice nap. You can see Gwen is lying at the entrance to the hole, and Tima is the queen of the mound, and she's lying right on top. And then every now and then you'll see a few little ears picking up for the little cubs that are feeding from Gwen herself. Every now and then we see their heads just poking up, but it's all very sedate at the den at the moment. Everybody is taking it very easy. And I was about to rush off from the den because we got a report that Tandi and Tamba we just seen, but unfortunately it's in an area where there's no ways we'll get any reception on Chitwa. It's in the Muluwanini drainage line, so there's unfortunately no chance of us being able to show them. So I decided I'd rather spend time with hyenas, and we'll see if we can't see the little cubs playing after their feed. But you can see Gwen obviously is in no mood to move whatsoever, because if you look below her on the mound, you will see that she went to the toilet right where she was lying, and it's all then run down the mound itself. So she's urinated right at the entrance, and that's because she probably didn't feel like moving at all. And so there's now a long wet river that has come down from the entrance hole, which is not the most ladylike thing to have done, but I suppose it is what it is. Who can judge? She's nursing 2 cubs and has had to move around and try and find nutrients for herself as well as to provide nutrients for the cubs. So it's hard work and tiring work, and well, if you're a mom, like I say, we can't judge. Tony, you're wondering if hyenas live in groups or alone? Well, Tony, what you can see here is you can see a low-ranking female that is lying there with 2 cubs that are suckling behind her, and then a cub from a different female. So they live in groups together. They live in what's called clans, and you will find that it is a matriarchal society. So females run the show. They dictate what goes on. Humans like to think that men run the show, but even in our human race, but we all know that that's different. Women actually run what goes on, and it's the same with hyenas. They will have a big, large female that will dictate what goes on, and then you'll find all the females after that, and then the cubs, and then behind the cubs will be all the males. So the males are very low ranking in hyena society, but they do hang around as a clan together. And what you'll find is that there's den sites like this where the young ones are at, and most of the time it's just the mothers that spend time around the den. Every now and then you'll get some of the males that will come in. They're not really welcome, but every now and then they will come and lie close by. And even sometimes some of the females that are not denning will also come towards the mounds. From there, then you'll find at night they all separate and go in different directions as they go and try and find food for themselves and one another. And if they find small carcasses that they can, or small predators that they can chase off their carcasses, they will then readily grab those, and they won't call, they'll just feed off it themselves. But if they come across something large, let's say like a buffalo or a hippo carcass or something like that, then you'll find they'll start to vocalize, and that will bring all the rest of the hyenas in, and they'll then be able to start hustling and grab bits of meat and chase away all of the other predators that might be there. And then they also do hunt themselves, so you'll find that they will try and chase animals as a group together. Now, Kristen, I think I heard right, you're wondering how old Gwen is. I was saying yesterday I think she's about 12 years old or 11 years old. I might be wrong. I think somebody did send me a message saying that she was first seen on the drives in 2007, and she already had young ones. So that would typically mean that she was about a year, maybe 2 years old. And so that is 10 years ago, which would mean that she's 11, 12 years old or somewhere there would be my estimate. I know some of you are very good at telling us the ages of these hyenas, so maybe some of you can help us out. Crystal or Chris Rogue, you guys know the hyenas well. Michael, you also know them these days, so maybe you can help us out. But I think 11, 12 would be my guess, and hopefully I'm right in that. Now, little Intima over there, she's a little bit older. She was born in February, March, somewhere around that area, so she's approaching 7 months now. And then the 2 little ones that have just been born, I would say, are no older than 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, approaching 4 weeks, but around that area, so they're still tiny. Now, hopefully with Intima coming down, she's the one that's just walked down and sat behind Gwen there. hopefully with her coming down, the little ones will poke their heads up and we'll be able to get a view of them, because for now they seem to be trying to hide away. And it's all too much for Djuma today. She looks tired. I think where she was lying on top of the mound was in too much sun, and she's now come down and found herself a little bit more shade. You also find that sometimes these hyenas get a little bit jealous. If they're not suckling and they see others suckling, then they want to come and try and get in there. But you'll find Gwen will be very protective of her milk. She won't let Intima suckle from her. Starlight, you're wondering if it's normal for hyenas to lie in their own urine? Well, yes, I've seen them do it many times. They sometimes can be a little bit on the manky side, but they will do it from time to time. And same as lions. I've seen lions doing it regularly, where they just urinate while they lie there, and it just goes all over each other, and even urinate on each other. So it does happen, and with hyenas you will see it from time to time too. So I actually once watched a hyena drinking water and urinating at the same time while it was drinking from the same puddle. So, and it was not exactly a large source of water, it was a small puddle on the road, so undoubtedly it drank its own urine, but that's just the way it goes, and I suppose living up to their reputation a little bit when it comes to that. But actually, funny enough, hyenas are a lot cleaner than people think. Everyone kind of looks at them as this dirty animal that steals and is always around rotting meat, but they're actually quite clean animals. They groom themselves a lot. They make sure that they don't have bits of meat all over them, and they actually don't smell. When you sit here at the den sites like we are now, there's no smell coming from them. They don't stink. They are just normal like any of the other animals. Kobe is 15 years old. You want to know if I would sleep with any of the hyenas. Kobe, most certainly not. And the reason why is, one is because you go anywhere near those cubs, I think Gwen will be quite upset with you and certainly wouldn't allow you to sleep with them. But if she did, hypothetically, allow us to go and cuddle up there between all of them, I can guarantee you that you'd be so covered in fleas and little mites and all kinds of other things that you'll be itching for weeks. So I'm no way going to attempt to do that. Certainly don't want to be covered in fleas. I know wild dog dens get absolutely inundated with all kinds of parasites, and I would imagine hyena dens are much the same. So no cuddling of flea infested hyenas for me, thank you very much. But Kobe, if you're ever out in Africa, you're welcome to try. Brian, you're wondering if hyenas have ever been domesticated and used as guard dogs. Not as far as I know. There is a gang in Nigeria that has a bunch of hyenas that they've domesticated, and they've put them on leashes, and they have these kind of these things over the muzzles over their, what do you call it? Restraints over their muzzles every now and then, and I think it's more just for show than anything else, which is probably quite cruel to those hyenas. I don't think those hyenas are probably treated in the best manner. But other than that, there's really no one that's actually domesticated hyenas for that purpose. At the end of the day, they're a wild animal and really shouldn't be domesticated and shouldn't be used in any way to do guard dog duty or anything like that. They belong out in nature and free. They're sociable animals, so taking one away from its group and using it for your own sort of protection is never the best idea. These animals belong in groups together out in the wild, where they can function as a hyena, which is to scavenge, hunt, do all of those kind of things, and they don't belong in the city or in a house. They're large animals. They don't look that big, but I can tell you when they stand up, they're not small in any shape or form, and they have dietary requirements and all kinds of things that us as people probably just wouldn't be able to give them in a domesticated way. So far better that they are out in the wild, and certainly hope that anybody thinking of domesticating hyenas immediately banishes that thought process. But you can see they are very sleepy at the moment. There's really no sign of movement. I'm going to try and just move around so we can see the little ones. Andy, you're wondering where the male hyenas live? So, Andy, what you'll find is male hyenas will just find somewhere to lie down in the bush. They often just kind of rest somewhere close by to the dens. I spent a lot of time with the Elephant Plains clan, and those male hyenas used to spend a lot of time just right near the den itself. I'm trying to not decapitate myself as I go through here. Let's see if we can't find the little ones. There we go. There's a little ear poking up. You can see Gwen is woken up a bit as well as we came through. But, oh no, the ears have gone behind there. You can just see them every now and then. There you go. Comes one out of the den. Hey, little guy. Or girl. Not sure what you are yet. I don't think we've been able to sex these guys. But the males will just find somewhere to lie under a bush in a shady area. Sometimes they'll come towards the den. Generally, they're met with a rather nasty reception by the adult females, and so they just go and skulk off and lie somewhere close by, or they just find themselves somewhere random on their patrol during the night and then settle down there for the day. So they are around, and sometimes we will see them here, but it's very seldom. Faisal, you're wondering if male hyenas challenge one another in order to become the more dominant male to then mate with the female, or does the female choose the male when it comes to the mating procedures? Now, Faisal, there will definitely be some interaction between the males in order to establish a dominance. So you'll have a dominant sort of male within the males. So he's not going to be dominant of the hyena clan, but he's dominant of the males that are within that clan. So he will assert himself and try and push the others away. And that process of him doing that and dominating the others will be noticed by the females, and therefore they'll accept him as the male to mate with. And that's how it basically works. Well, here in this particular section, I'm interested to see in the Mara, where the hyena density is so much more, if the females mate with multiple different males in an estrus cycle, much like what we see with our cats. You know, leopard and lions will actively search out different males within their territory. So I would be interested to know, in a system like the Masai Mara, where we've got a lot of hyena, if they're ending up mating with different males all the time. Here in the Sabi Sands, and particularly the Djuma clan, not too many males to choose from, and so they end up just mating with the most dominant of those males that are here. But I wonder if the system would change in a big system like that with lots more animals. Look at these two little cute ones. They are super, super cute. Oh, I wonder if one of them is going to try and climb over Mom. I would imagine if it does try climb over Mom, there's going to be a huge problem, is because from that side, there's no way that it will be able to hold on, and the next port of call from there is the bottom of the mound, because it's a very steep drop from where Mom is, and certainly it will go tumbling down all the way to the bottom, which won't go down very well, and I'm sure Mom will be quite unimpressed by all of it. But you can see what they're trying to do is almost trying to nudge Mom from the back there to ask her to please roll in a way that they can actually feed, because at the moment they're not able to get any food from the way she's lying. Her teats are the wrong side, and there's nowhere to sit to actually suckle on this side. It's too steep. So they're almost nudging her and pushing her and using their heads to try and roll her back the way she was, so that they can actually feed again. But it's super cute when you just see this little face popping over. What are you doing, you two? Now, I don't know where Ntima's gone. Ntima's also disappeared up to the top of the mound again. She's gone back to her normal place. Come on, Mom, roll over. Spoilt with this den. These little guys are the cutest things in the whole world, and the more that they spend time outside, the more curious they get, and the more that we will actually see them exploring this environment. And I really hope that these two are going to make it. We've had lots of sort of trials and tribulations of this hyena clan over the last 7 months. There's been a few losses in the cub department and even in the adults by the looks of things, and so it's going to be really nice to just see if these two can just grow up and spend a lot of time, and hopefully they'll use this den for quite a lot longer, and it will become a permanent sort of fixture over the next few weeks or months. And as we watch these two get larger and larger, oh, little one, you're going to end up falling from there. You can see it's now crawled its way onto the back. Just be careful you don't fall over. And the other one seems to be stopping it in some way. Nope. Is that where you're going to sleep, little one? Have you found yourself the best pillow ever in the form of Mom? Looks like it. Looks like it's decided this is where I'm going to lie down. But first I want to bite Mom's leg and make sure that she knows I'm here. These things are just so cute. You can see they look around, especially when the wind blows, they're a little bit more wary of what's going on. So they know that if there's certain sounds that they must go scurrying back into the den. So when the wind blows a little bit, we hear a lot of leaves rustling and movement of trees, and they just get a little bit nervous of all of it. So quite interesting to kind of see the way they're working out their environment. Remember, their time outside of the den has not been long. They probably have only been out of the den actually moving around for the last sort of week and a half. So Kristen, you're wondering if hyenas have a better success rate in raising cubs than what other predators do. Kristen, it's hard to say. You know, at the end of the day, it's very reliant on the number. Oopsie, this is not going to end well. I feel like there's going to be a bum going over front legs and down the slope any minute now. It depends on other predators that are around. It depends on the number of the clan and how well the clan can protect their particular area and protect the little ones from, you know, other predators and things like that, as well as to be able to provide food and to be able to get the nutrients that can then be passed down onto the little cubs. So I think it's a very dependent situation on the area. We know that here at Djuma, this particular clan has not really grown too much over the last little bit. They've sort of stagnated slightly, and we've had a number of cubs being lost, as well as we know 2 hyenas have been killed this year. One in Buffelshoek and one on Little Gowrie. We don't know exactly who they are, but we are pretty sure that they're from this clan. So it means that they've lost a few, and that then means that raising of cubs seems to be quite difficult for this particular clan. The contrary is very true in the Elephant Plains clan, where they just never seem to lose cubs. They just churn them out and they seem to just raise them, and they go into sub-adults and even up into adulthood. So I think it depends on the size of the clan. It depends on the number of predators that they're having to deal with. We know last year the Agama spent a lot of time here, which would have put a lot of pressure on these guys. So in terms of their successfulness, I don't think you can compare it to the cats. The cats have different ways of going about things. Also, hyenas tend to birth a lot quicker than what the cats do. Yeah, their birth intervals are much faster. You know, they're birthing every year and a half as opposed to every sort of 3 to 4 years that the cats are birthing. So it's difficult to compare success rates between them. Like I say, it depends on a lot of external factors and a lot of other factors within their environment as to whether or not they are a successful clan. But this is just the cutest thing. Watching these 2 climbing all over their mom has got to be one of the most wonderful things. Yes, little one, what are you doing? No, there's no milk is not going to come from there. It's almost as though they're biting mom in every direction just to see if maybe they can get some milk. What is quite interesting is you can see when a hyena is nursing, because they actually get very swollen teats. It becomes very obvious. So since if you just look behind her leg there, you'll see suckling. You can see the teats are quite exposed, and that helps with just sexing of hyenas. Now, Michael, hopefully I've got this question right. There was somebody on the radio and Chantal speaking and I was talking, so the brain gets a bit turned around at times. But you were wondering how the hierarchy forms if there's so many different lineages within the clan. Is basically what I got from that question. I think that's about the gist of it. But so what happens with the clans form if there's different lineages? Okay, there we go. Well, clans are generally, so if it's higher ranking females, they 99.9% of the time are absorbed into the clan. There are sometimes cases where there'll be a bit of a fight amongst some of the higher ranking females, and some get overthrown and then chased out, and those will then form a different clan altogether. But generally how clans form is that something like the Elephant Plains clan, let's say, the clan gets far too big for the amount of food in the area. They can't sustain such a large clan, and so then you get a split that happens, and that clan then goes off and starts its own section and goes to find its own area and either chases out other hyenas or then keeps moving until it finds a section that it can dominate itself. So that's generally what happens with some of the clans, is that they break apart according to resources. So when it gets too difficult to feed all of them, then new ones start to develop in different places. Also, if there's food items in a certain place that attracts certain individuals there, that could then potentially start a clan in that area, because they've been able to find a high percentage of food and water. And so it just depends on again, environmental factors as well as the size of the clan itself. These two are just super cute. You can't eat your mom's arm, or leg, should I say. Poor Gwen is just kind of looking at us as if to say, really, kids? Do you have to eat me? Look at that. She's just like... That's a mom that's resigned herself to the fact that she's going to be nibbled on for the next little bit. And now starting to close her eyes a little as well. Shame, my girl. Are you being chewed on? Oh, look at that. Isn't that sweet? Now there's an impala that's just alarm called north of us. I want to hear if it carries on alarm calling. Now, unfortunately, it sounds like there's a few gremlins in the Mara, so you're now going to be stuck with me for the rest of the show, which hopefully you guys don't mind. I'm certainly quite thrilled to be spending it with the hyena cubs, and it's an epic way just to finish our morning, watching these two go about their business and watch them sniff around and carry on. I'm interested to see why this impala is alarm called. It just sent out one snort. The hyenas don't seem to be too worried, but it could be with this wind. Maybe they're picking up the scent of the hyenas and it's just made it a little bit nervous, and that's why it's given one shout. It hasn't shouted again since, so I don't think it's spotted anything, because if it had seen something like a leopard, that impala would have been releasing lots of snorts rapidly to tell that leopard, I've seen you, stop moving around in this area and try and get out of here, and then it will run away. So I don't think it's seen a predator. I think it's more on the wind that it's picked up something. Oh, here comes Ntima. Ntima was the one that noticed the impala snort. There we go. Hello, Ntima. Look how big she's getting. Her legs are getting so long now. She's really starting to develop quite quickly. It's crazy to think a few months ago she looked just like these two little ones, a little black ball of fur that was very timid and hiding away in the Fullermans den, and now she's this long-legged sub-adult. Vegas Beauty Snob, you're wondering at what age Ntima will leave the den. Well, Ntima in all likelihood will start venturing away from the den at about, let's say about 9-10 months. She will start her first kind of movements away. She probably already has moved a little bit away from the den. Remember, she's also been moved from the Fullermans den to here, so she's experienced the outside world a little bit. But from about 10 months they start to move around, and by the time they reach a year they really are pretty much going all over the place. They will come back to the den and spend time in the den during the day, but at night they're roaming around and checking out what's going on. So normally about a year old. But it sounds like the guys have found one of the Birminghams up in Buffelshoek, so I was just getting an update. It sounds like Tinyo, so we know where he went from yesterday. He must have moved from Buffelshoek Dam straight northwards, and he's right up against the Manyeleti boundary. And earlier I was saying that I'll chat about the Matimba male and the Birmingham male and the Styx Pride on a carcass and sharing all of it. Quite a strange situation. I watched the video, and interesting to see that the Styx Pride and the Birmingham male, and I don't know if it was Nena or Nsuku, one of the two. It looks like possibly Nena in the video, but it's one of the more blonde males of the two. It's not Tinyo or Mfumo, because we know Tinyo is here, and Mfumo has a lot more scarring than that male in the video. But effectively what happened was they killed an animal. I can't remember if it was a buffalo or something like that, and they then went to go and drink, and in the time that they went to go and drink, one of the Matimba males came in and stole the carcass from basically stole the carcass from the Styx Pride. Then the Birmingham males and them came back, and the Styx came back, and there was this kind of little interaction between all of them, and the Birmingham male rushed in, and then there was a bit of growling and hissing, and really that's where it ended. The Matimba male dominated the carcass, and he ended up feeding, and the Birmingham and the Styx just sat back and watched, and they actually lay quite close to him, which is really very odd. And I think it's possibly to do with the fact that Birmingham male was on his own, that he wasn't more aggressive towards that Matimba male and wasn't trying to push him out. Maybe he realized one-on-one they're quite evenly matched and was just happy to sit there and growl at one another and not risk injury. That's what I think has happened. Maybe he also remembers those Matimba males from a time back and knows that they are a powerful coalition. There might have been another one somewhere around there, because he knows there might have been two at one point, and so it could have been a situation where he's just worried about getting into too much of a physical battle on his own, knowing that the Styx Pride is not going to defend him in any way. You won't find the females jumping into a male fight because they don't want to risk injuries and certainly don't want to risk their cubs. The interesting part about it that I found was that the Styx didn't move away too quickly. The cubs were quite curious, and they went up towards this Matimba male, and he was fairly tolerant of them, which is really strange. You'd think that a male that didn't father cubs would try and push them out and chase them, but for some reason they didn't, and it's a really odd situation. It's not one that I've seen too often. It's very, very seldom you'll see a male lion that doesn't father cubs being very sort of polite and decent towards cubs and not really going after them in any way and killing them. Maybe it's because the Matimbas have become a little bit more nomadic, that they're not really trying to mate because they know that's going to draw attention to them, and that's why they haven't killed those cubs in a takeover. But it is a very strange sighting, and one that I'm sure will be discussed many times. Hopefully, though, the Styx cubs do get away from there and there's no damage done between the males fighting or going after each other. You never know. Sometimes it can reach a fever pitch, and it would be interesting to know what happens today as to whether or not those two have still followed one another, or if they've split apart and the Birmingham male is now still with the Styx and the Matimba male has moved on, or if they're still hanging around one another. It certainly will be interesting what happened during the night. Right, our hyena den is still very sedate at the moment, so I think we're going to leave them, and there is another vehicle that wants to head in this direction, so we're going to probably leave our hyenas and let them enjoy their snooze in this morning sun. The sun is now up, it's nice and warm. Still a bit of a cold wind, but it is actually warm. And funny enough, I'm actually really getting quite hot myself now that I think of it. Oh no. Now, it seems as though Miss Taylor Jane McCurdy is watching once again. So, Miss Taylor Jane McCurdy, you are on leave. Why are you awake early and watching Safari Live? Are you missing all of us? I would imagine she is missing us. She tends to be all over social media at times. And Taylor, we are missing you too, so don't worry. It's not that we're not missing you. We are, and you want to know how old are these cubs because you can't really see on the screen. Well, Taylor Jane McCurdy, these cubs are somewhere between, I would say, 3 and 4 weeks old. They normally start emerging from the den at about 3 weeks, and Tara found them a few days ago, so I think it was last week, Tuesday or Wednesday was the first time they were seen. Careful there, Senzo. And so I'd imagine that they're about 3 or 4 weeks old, Taylor. They are exploring, but they're still not very confident beyond the whole of the den, and still very black. There's no sign of any lightening around the neck or ears yet, which does happen after the first month. So I would say 3 to 4 hours spent actually found, because they moved it and Taylor was the one that found it here, which is really cool. So thank you, Taylor, for that. And I'm sure she's really looking forward to getting back and getting into the swing of things. I know she's been in the city, and if she's anything like me, and I know she is, both of us don't do very well in the city at all. We can't really deal with all of the traffic and varying other things, although it seems as though her, Byron and Alia were causing mass chaos the last few days in Johannesburg, and have been out together a few times, which is quite nice. I'm glad they all caught up, and just goes to show that for those of you that don't think that we're a tight-knit family, that we are. Outside of the drives and all of that, we always say that we're a family, but seriously, we spend a lot of time together. We tend to go on leave together, and that it's really cool that we have this relationship amongst all of us. It's quite a weird thing, because I've never really worked somewhere where it's as close as what it is here. Everybody really gets along and everyone spends time together and certainly has each other's backs, which is a very cool thing. So we are looking forward to you coming back, Taylor, and I hope that it's going to carry on with the sightings, because it's been really quite busy since Taylor's gone. So I'm really hoping that she's going to come back and get to see all the lions and leopards and wonderful things that we've had, including our little hyena cubs that have been spending time outside of the den. It certainly will brighten up the camp, Taylor, because it's very quiet. There's, like I say, just the 5 of us in camp, and well, I'm not the loudest by any stretch of the imagination, and Chantal and Alice are fairly quiet too, and Inno and Senzo. So when Taylor gets back, it's going to be a massive increase in sound, and then, well, a few days after that, Byron gets back, and then it really starts to get quite loud back in camp again, and I'm pretty sure it will be back to normal once those two arrive, and then Ali back in September. So it's a slow process, but we're slowly but surely getting all of our usual people back, and should be highly entertaining to have them. I always laugh around Taylor and Byron and Ali. The 3 of them are, as I said on their Facebook post, are a bunch of clowns, because they all mess around all the time and are just a laugh a minute, and they give each other just as much trouble as you could imagine, but in a very friendly sort of family way. Oh no, Hornbill, why are you flying away now? Naughty Hornbill. Our Hornbill, I was hoping, was sitting very nicely, perfectly at eye level. It would have been a wonderful sighting, but it flew away. Naughty. Anyway, it's the way it goes. Birds have wings, they fly, that's what they're supposed to do, so I suppose it's the way it happens. Now hopefully James and Scott are alright in the Mara. Like I say, there's a few little technical issues, but hopefully they're okay and nothing untoward has happened to them. I would imagine that they are just fine, and that they're going to be heading back to camp for a well-deserved break. I know Scott has been out most of the evening, and I think James too, so hopefully they're going to get a little bit of downtime for a bit and rest before this afternoon, because once again it will be them. And another reminder for this afternoon that we will be out at 3:30 Central Africa time, so we're not going to be 3 o'clock like we have been. It's now moving half an hour later, so 3:30 Central Africa time is what time we get going this afternoon. So we will see you all a little bit later this afternoon. Right, well, I think the plan for later is I'm going to go and try and see if I can't find Thandi and Tamba, and hopefully they've moved out of the Mulawanini, because that's where they are, so that inflow into Chitwa Dam. We also have Peter Braat here this week, and he's helping us with the move of a tower and receivers towards Chitwa, which should solve all of these problems in the Mulawanini. We should be able to get better signal there and at Chitwa as well, which is fantastic news, and it's going to certainly make things quite interesting, because we'll definitely be able to do a lot more around Chitwa and a lot more areas on Chitwa, and see some new ones that we haven't had signal in before. So hoping that that's going to make a difference, and we'll definitely try this afternoon to see if we can't find Thandi and Tamba, so that's something to look forward to. And well, like I said, after breakfast we'll try go out and track Shadow, Tingana and the cub and see where they are, and if they're not still in that area and haven't crossed over by now. I would imagine though that they should by all means be sleeping now. It's quite warm, so I would hope that the 3 of them have found somewhere to have a little bit of a rest, and we should be able to find them, and then this afternoon be able to spend some time with either them or Thandi and Tamba. So one of the sisters, I would imagine, will be on the cards for this afternoon. It would be really nice to have either one around, but particularly Shadow. Like I say, I would like to see her and see how she's doing, and see how that leg is doing, and how she's managing to cope, and whether or not it's gotten any better. But it is that time of the drive where we need to start saying our goodbyes, as the show is coming to an end, unfortunately. But we will see you this afternoon, like I say, at 3:30 Central African time. I'm sure James will be out, and Scott and myself as per this morning. But from all of us, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you on the Sunset Safari.